Okay. I'm waiting on Brian. Oh, he hasn't seen my text yet. Don't know where he is. While we wait, I can show you. I can show you my t-shirts. Look at that. Oh, wow. Chad Muter made those. Good, huh? Pretty cool. I like them. I don't know. I don't think 99s are a thing anywhere else, are they? Here's Brian. Hey.
Yep, I was in the wrong one.
Yeah, I only figured. So there's like a few outliers that were sent in advance. Like we scheduled this ages ago, but there's a few that I didn't know you could turn that off. So in the description, I had it, and then since then I've realized, oh, I can just delete that because it's happened a few times. But you and a couple of others, I need to go back and I don't need to change yours now. But
The special ones.
yeah, I paid customs on my BFriendly t-shirt on Monday, and I was like, oh, how cool! It's going to be here on Wednesday. I can wear it, and it still hasn't come. Usually, if I pay my customs, it comes the next day, like the day after. But I paid my extra €8, and I still don't have the fucking thing.
Yeah, I mean, it was a weird time just starting everything that close to semifinals. So I wasn't necessarily that happy with the amount of time it's taken to get everything out that the people have ordered. And then additionally, we're trying to pursue some options to have a distribution, not just for BFriendly, but for like OG stuff and a few others in Europe or in the UK to hopefully reduce the shipping prices.
Yeah, because it wasn't, the shipping wasn't bad. It's just customs is such a pain in the fucking ass when it, like, when you buy something and you're like, oh wow, like I've had it off like Wild Zombie, Vindicate, like you loads where you're like, wow, that's actually really reasonable, like $20 and $5 shipping, no problem. Then it's like, oh, and $8 to $12 of customs when it
They
comes.
just
It's
keep
like,
hitting you.
yeah. It's like it's like the postman or the mailman is like standing there going, not yet. Grease my palms. Yeah, move to the States, Nick. That would be the easy thing to do, wouldn't it? My plan is like when I go to the games, just I'm bringing like an empty suitcase and I'm just buying stuff that I've been looking at but not committing to buying because I don't want to pay I actually don't know what government gets it. Presumably the Irish government.
No, they're
Gets
gonna just
customs.
take that suitcase, they're gonna open it up, and they're gonna hit you right there. Every item, €10, £10,
Well,
whatever it is.
Well, I just have to take off all the tags and be like, no, this is the shopping. This isn't shopping. This is what I came with. That's my. It's like,
There you
what?
go.
Really? You travel to America with 40 t-shirts and nothing else? It's like, yeah, I wear someone's underpants, someone's socks. Yeah. Okay, so I was actually looking. It's a fucking long time. The last time you were on the show, like an enormous amount has changed. Like
I believe that. How do you know how long it was?
I mean, it was definitely 18 months ago.
Yeah, I wasn't sure
It,
it felt like it could have been close to 2 years.
yeah, I remember when Sevan came on the first time, he said, oh, I have this guy that I bring on the show sometimes. And it was you he was talking about. So like it was a long time ago because you were on like just after that. So a lot has changed in like the sport. We left since you've been on, we left sanctionals. We've had a season of semifinals and now like back to more of a
No
regionals.
way that it's been since we left sanctionals. That was in
I'm pretty
2020.
well, we were still in it until like the start of 2021, I think.
Wow.
Entertain yourselves and I'll Google it here. Oh no, that's your one sharing it. Friend request. Oh, it's just telling me the time that it was on, like how long it is. Oh fuck it. Anyway,
Unprepared.
really, really unprepared. I'm making Savannah look like an absolute lord of podcasting doing this. Maybe if I just search the name. I'm going to edit all of this out of the audio version. Friend request. Here we go. It's loading.
I'm at my brother's house. He's got this chair here. I can't tell like if I should be sitting forward in this chair or backwards in this chair. I'm not used to it.
I'm waiting for someone to whip the curtains open behind you, or like for a leg with fishnet stockings to like start bending through. So what date do you think it was? Just off the top of your head, what would you guess?
I would say it feels like it's been 2 years, so I guess I'd say June of 2021.
November 4th, 2020.
Damn.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Wow.
yeah. So since then we've had
All of the 2021 season, all of the
yeah
2022 season, and everything but the games of 2023.
crazy. That's so long ago. That is so long ago. So I want like okay, we'll start
And
off
you're
with
still doing this?
I know, yeah. Like anyone else would have quit after like the day after that episode. Like, fuck this, I'm done. I remember but like there's I don't know, do you think that you're more comfortable? Have you got more comfortable doing this type of thing since then? Or like is it like experience doing it, or is it that you actually feel like you belong doing it? Because there's a definite shift of back then you were like an enjoyable person to talk to, but like less confident, less like kind of vivacious. You were more like, you'd answer the question that was asked, but like not much personality would shine through. Like
No playful banter.
whereas now, like you just seem more like kind of relaxed and at ease with it. Is that just because you've done so much of it?
I'm sure, just like anything else, you get the reps in and it comes a little bit naturally. But this is maybe one of the more nervous podcasts I've been to do in a while because we have had zero conversation about what we're supposed to be talking about.
Do you always like send it back and forth beforehand?
No, when it's Sevan, it's a different story because I've just done it with him so many times. And generally speaking, there's at least a reason why we're doing the podcast, even if it's just getting to know Brian Friend. We've talked about like what the point of the podcast is so I can prepare for it a little bit. Usually if I do like one-offs like Invictus Mindset, Wex Appeal podcast, just something like that, which is more similar to this, then there's a little bit of I just want to hit on these couple topics. It might be a little bit of a history of Brian, a little bit of where are we at with whatever competition at the time, and then maybe they have a few things specifically. But this one, no idea, so I just showed up.
Yeah, no, I don't do that. I don't like well, generally I'd like kind of do I think I have a similar process to Savannah where I'll consume like content pertaining to that person for about a week. Um Even if I think I know a lot about the person already. And then the day of I'll like jot down some notes. So like today on my lunch break at work, I wrote on an A4 sheet. I just wrote down like talking, like ask about and just like one word prompts in case I get to a point where I'm like, fuck, there was something else I was supposed to ask and I can't remember what it is. Now I just look down and it says like preview. Do you know what I mean? So I
and
can't.
you know what that means. I still have no idea what that
Yeah,
means.
yeah. So I can't. Like I've had people in the past ask. I remember when Ben Bergeron came on first. Someone was like, I think it was Patrick Cummings was setting up, and he's like, "What would you like to talk to him about?" And I was like, "I don't fucking know yet. Like I haven't thought about it. It's like
That
it's
doesn't
like
even
3
make
weeks
any
ago."
sense because Ben Bergeron doesn't have any discipline regiments in his life. So him wanting to know specifically what's going to be talked about is totally out
Yeah,
of character.
he's a total loose cannon. It's like scattergun approach to everything.
Actually I've spoken about him and myself in that regard before. I when I was first learning a lot about CrossFit, he was one of the people that I watched a lot through the kind of 2014 to 18 time period. He was putting out his podcast regularly with Patrick Cummings and had a lot of content that I thought was maybe like some people even at that time, I don't know if I made this up, but someone would refer to him as like the Glassman of the East. Like he was really preaching the methodology from its origins and its core. At least it seemed that way to me back then. But the one thing I just couldn't get on the same page with him about was the like extremely disciplined structure that he has day to day, week to week in his life. Like it just doesn't. I don't operate that way.
Yeah, I've heard like Fraser and other people as well talk about that. Like how you do one thing is how you do everything. And my like every time I hear that, I'm like, is it though? Like I really phone some shit in and I really work hard on some other stuff. Like I don't, you know, hang up a wash the same way that I edit a video for podcasts. Like I'm literally just throwing shit on the line. Like it'll get dry, it's fine. But like I will diligently sit down for an hour and do something for this. So I don't there are certain bits I agree. Like there's certain bits that I'm like, oh that's brilliant. And then there's other bits where I'm like, but that's simply just not true. Like it's not true. But yeah, I don't know.
Then
So I
again, maybe that's why those guys are those guys and we're these guys.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, fuck, maybe, yeah. That's why, and that's why all my clothes are always creased. Um, I want to start off. So you were at 3 semifinals. You were at North America East, North America West, and you're at Europe.
Mm-hmm.
Um, three. Well, I guess East and West were quite similar in like they're in a similar type of location. They're in a similar, type of venue or whatever. And then Europe was presumably quite different from that. Um, did you favor the Berlin? Was that more you're like, okay, yeah, this is more intense kind of?
I'm guessing you didn't read the article I wrote with my takeaways from semifinals.
I didn't read all of it, Brian. Come on.
one of the 6 sections just says North America needs better venues next year.
Is it just because they're like it's basically an open plan room and is it that the
There's
problem?
2 main reasons. One of them is from a logistics and cost perspective, is it's way more expensive and difficult to operate and run those competitions in the convention centers than it is in an arena that's designed for hosting big audiences and big spectacles, which, to put on a CrossFit competition like that is a spectacle with, with all the equipment that they have, and then the timing of everything throughout the day, having space for the equipment that makes sense to take things in and out, and a place to house the athletes that's, close by and convenient. There's many, if you're just watching, especially if you're just watching from home, you'll only see the competition floor and you don't realize all of the extracurricular that's involved in putting on one of these semifinal competitions. And yeah, if you go there, you'll still, if you're just a fan, you'll see more of the production, but you won't see the back of house, and you won't see the amount of space that's required for warm up, storing equipment. You won't understand the logistics involved in the broadcast to set that up, the internet situation, the seating situation. There's just a ton of variables that having an arena setting eliminates from the logistics side. The problem, which I identified in the article, is that in North America, in May and June specifically, every arena like that is being used for a graduation of some kind. So
Okay.
finding something that's in a populous area, because they picked areas that were a little bit more easy to get to and more well populated in Orlando and LA basically this year, than some of the previous years were there in Minnesota and Knoxville. So to find a spot that's where you want to host it, that has an arena that has all those amenities available, like you need to be on the trail like right now, finding those spots for next year, and you still might not find them. You might need to be looking 2 years down the road. And and I know that a lot of the CrossFit Games stuff is going on. Like they're planning for the games now. They're in Madison looking at stuff and doing logistics there. It's like they need to have a branch of their team or someone on their team, I think, that's getting ahead of that. And maybe they do. The second thing is from the consumer perspective, which is the fans. And yeah, just, I mean, the arena feel, you were there in Berlin,
So self-serving.
it was really, in case you're just listening, he went to the article now and he's gone to the last thing I said, which was that the support for our BFriendly was overwhelming, and it was appreciated. Even in Europe, where I'm not sure what necessarily the reach is compared to the US, there were many people that came up to just say hi or thank us or ask for a picture or whatever. And unfortunately, we weren't able to get like the apparel over there that we did in North America, but it was nice that people were reaching out and recognizing what we're trying to do. So it wasn't about me, it was about them.
Did Chad Mueller do this website?
He did.
It's so good. I fucking love that yellow on the top, like the progress bar.
Oh yeah, that is a cool feature. Yeah,
it's
Chad's
really
great.
Nice. Yeah,
Chad is
really
great.
Good. Sorry, you were saying the second thing. Second
for
issue.
the fans, just to consume it. I was saying you were there in Berlin, and you could everyone has a great seat. It's because it's an arena that's designed for spectating, sports events or concerts or whatever. It wasn't too big of an arena where we felt like kind of drowned out by the space. It may not have had every seat full, but it was like the lower bowl was full. There were people in the upper balcony, and it was loud, but not too loud. Whereas, like in California, the venue was super loud, just like echoey and not as enjoyable to be in my opinion. So yeah, I thought the European venue was great, and I hope that someone can, do whatever work is required to maybe lock down a couple of those for North America for the next couple of years. I think that experience would be overall better and also more cost effective for the organizers.
What about like football stadiums? Is it too, would you be kind of messing with grass and stuff too much? Are they
No,
precious
I
about
mean,
that?
look, the Granite Games was outdoor at the Minnesota Vikings practice facility the last 2
Yeah.
years. It's doable. There's, there are different variables involved there, but yeah, it's an option.
Yeah.
I guess it comes down to there's so many variables that were different from semifinal to semifinal anyway this year, that having one indoor versus one outdoor is like almost, it's like, well, whatever, you get what you get, I guess. But well, you got to do
Yeah.
half the events of the CrossFit Games outside anyway.
Yeah.
So
That's fair. Josh says a pound, I assume it means €1, for every time Brian mentions disc golf. If that's donations, Josh, then Brian, please mention it frequently.
not even sure what you're
Have at
talking
it.
about.
Have at it. Are you in Madison now?
I am.
Why?
My brother lives here.
Yeah, but like, come on, nobody visits their brother. Are you like
Well,
scoping out?
I'm gonna be moving from Chicago to Charlotte later this month, and so I wanted to see him a couple days before I left because it would be a lot more difficult to see him. And these are like the last 2 days before he gets into his summer stretch for the tennis responsibilities that he has. So we played disc golf last night. That's one. We played disc golf this morning. That's two. And we're going to play disc golf this afternoon. That's three.
Pony up, Josh. Charlotte, you're moving to Charlotte. Are we all supposed to move to Charlotte? Did I miss that in the thread? Are we all supposed to move? Do I have to move as well?
Come on down. I mean, yeah, there was some life stuff that changed for me that made it kind of logical for me to move to somewhere else. And I'm not a big fan of Illinois necessarily. I really had a good setup at the gym there. I don't anymore. So I was looking for some place to go. And yeah, Taylor herself and Will Branstad are super helpful, super positive. Come on down. So I'm going to start coaching part-time across at Charlotte down there.
Cool.
Not in the same capacity I was before. Is probably too much with the other things that I have going on now. But a few hours a week just to keep a pulse on the coaching. I still enjoy that. Try to do some programming stuff with Taylor, I think, because I think I have some stuff to maybe offer there. Where I put out a poll when I first started BFriendly, just if people would be interested in the programming that I'm doing. It's more of like an everyday person's programming that has like 45 minutes to an hour at most to work out, and nothing that's like I'm not training to compete. I'm not training for the games, and there's a lot of stuff that's out there for that, and maybe not quite as much for just the everyday person that's self-made. So
yeah. I think, thank you, Alan. I think that's the biggest donation anyone's ever given on the show. So thank you for that. Okay, so Charlotte, wow, that's exciting. That's pretty big. How far away is that from where you live now?
No, it's like 14-hour drive, something like that.
Okay. Have you like, is your whole life where you were up until like, are you one of those like, I need a big truck?
No. Oh, I do have. I mean, I think I'm going to sell my car, get a rental, get a U-Haul, pack the stuff up, drive it down there, and get a new car. I've had this car for a decade anyway, so it seems like it's about that time.
Yeah, that's fair.
And it's I could tow it. Like, it's not that expensive to tow it, but I don't really feel that comfortable driving the U-Haul anyway. I don't drive a big truck very often. I don't want to have
Why
another
add
like 12
another
feet of
variable into the mix?
yeah. You're driving 15 hours. There's like some hills and stuff through like Tennessee and West Virginia, and so I don't know.
Yeah. That's so exciting though. Wow, I'm really excited for you for that. That's brilliant. Okay, so
The other thing that's great about Charlotte,
what?
I'm just like totally serious about this. It's an incredible hub for disc golf.
Oh, Josh,
That's four.
£4. And actually, £4 is actually more in euro. It's actually like 5.20 or something. So this is everything's looking up. Everything's coming up Millhouse. Okay, so you're in Madison. Are you? And are you? There's nothing to see yet, I suppose. I guess you could go for a walk around the arena if you wanted, but like it's probably not much point.
I mean, I would obviously I would absolutely love to be involved in something like that with with CrossFit at some point, but no, that's not the objective here. I don't
Y-
know any more or less about the games than you do.
you definitely know more about the games than I do. Your role within the semifinals then. So you're part of the broadcast team. And can I tell you what I think you do? And then you tell me if I'm right or wrong.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I reckon that you and like with help from like Halpin and others come up with uh people to watch in certain heats and why they should be watched and like who might struggle, who might do really well, that kind of stuff, where the good race might be or whatever, before the events, and you give like kind of cheat sheets to the broadcast team, like of like some stats or shit, I don't know, whatever to talk about when they're on the assault run or whatever for 20 minutes. And then you also, while the event is on, you're one of the people that's down there going, oh shit, like this person has obviously been working on this and didn't tell anyone, so they're doing really well, maybe focus on them a bit. And you tell whoever, camera guys or Chase or whoever, to mention them or whatever. Is that accurate?
Pretty close, yeah.
Okay.
The preparation phase has changed for me a lot over the years, where I used to do all of that work myself in a pretty slow way, and I'm actually really grateful for that, because it was kind of like being in the trenches with the data, with the information, with the athlete information is kind of how I learned it. Interacting with it. It's like if I did your math homework for you, you're not gonna know the way to do it. It'll be like
Lucy Campbell
essentially.
says, I sat next to Brian for event 405. I'm still not 100% sure he does, but I know the last women's heat, he was pissed.
That both okay, that's all true. Everything she's saying is true. Anyway, and then as the competition goes on, yeah, my headset is to the producer. And the director is the one who's making the camera changes, and he has a direct line to the talent, like the commentators, and to the camera operators on the floor and around the arena. He's talking constantly, and I don't like to have that constant talk in my eye or ear. And really, there's one person on his that's like can help influence the decisions that he's making about what to show for the spectators, and that's a producer. But the producer has many different roles as well. They're in charge of making sure they get all the sponsorships lined up, the ad reads, the run of shows for the whole competition, to like replays that they're going to show at the end of a heat or an event, and organizing those as it's happening live. So this person's doing a ton of different stuff that doesn't require necessarily too much knowledge of CrossFit. Most of the producers we work with do now know some stuff about CrossFit because they've done several of them, maybe, but by several of them, I mean like one or two a year. So
Yeah.
you're not, it's not the same as those of us that are like constantly involved and engaged in this. So one of the critical like pieces for the producer that's really valuable about me is that I'm the expert in CrossFit. So they don't have to worry about that. If there's something that they need to know or that the director needs to know that's maybe not super obvious, then I'll just talk to them. It's really a practice of less is more. So because they don't have time, and it's really about timing. I could say the right thing at the wrong time, and it won't be received well. And that's been a big process for me to learn, is whether it's aggregating the information and giving the perfect set of data to the analyst or to the broadcast for an event, so that we can hopefully get the story right, or doing it in the middle of a heat or a competition, making sure I say the right thing at the right time. That's what matters most. So like Lucy's Campbell, absolutely. Yeah, for most of the event, I'm not doing too much. I'm just trying to pick the moments that I can have the biggest influence for hopefully telling the story and not missing something, for the cameras back home. And that's what I was so upset about, is because we missed Karen Frey's snatch that ended up winning that event.
Hmm. I just saw HB said, Lucy, Brian is the only reason we were able to watch events 1 and 3 during East semifinals. You are so American centric, and Europe and West. And he's not the only reason, but he's one of the reasons. And now thank him for his service. I'm pretty sure that this person doesn't realize that this is Lucy Campbell, the athlete who was commentating on the event. But there you go. You've just introduced yourself to a games athlete. So yeah, so when you say that you could give or the right, say the right thing at the wrong time, have you got like an example of that, of like when you piss someone off by saying something that you felt was valid?
Now, the balance to that is there are times that I know I have to say something and it's not the right time, but it's like, but it's critical. And so I know that during the course of a 3-day competition, there's going to be maybe once a day where in the moment, I'm going to frustrate or irritate the producer, but it's like it has to be done. And they're never mad about it after the fact. Just in the moment, it's inconvenient because they're pulling a lot of different strings at the same time. And then on top of that, to be getting in information that is critical that they need to say to the director, hope that the director responds to that, and then get back to everything else they were doing isn't optimal. So, but most of the examples are just by doing it wrong over time. I don't have any. I have actually been in the truck and produced the show, but been in the producer role in Dubai in 2019 because the producer just walked out of the truck after day one, so they needed a they needed a fill in. So I have done that before, and I've been in the truck
Why
a couple
why why
times.
did they leave? What happened that they left?
It's honestly it's not an easy sport to produce.
And is it like shit? Is it a bit shit being in the truck? Like, is it a bit like detached? Is it a bit like watching from home almost? Obviously, you're spinning a lot of plates and shit, but is it a bit like removed kind of?
I do feel like I lose something. So, and I also, when I've done commentary or been like adjacent to the commentators and I'm not on I can't see the competition floor. This has happened in Dubai. This has happened at the games. This has happened at Wadapalooza, where they have the commentators in a remote location. I personally lose a lot of my ability in several different ways to impact what's happening or to story tell about what's going on,
Mm,
because yeah, like the as it is right now, the selection of broadcasts of what you see is limited. You don't see every lane for the totality of the event. In fact, you rarely see some of the lanes at all. And for someone like me I'm not necessarily looking for the first, second, third. There's a different group of people for that. I'm looking for anything else that's out of the ordinary, that's unusual, that's a storytelling element. So it's some of the stuff that I'll relay to the commentators might not be, hey, lane 4 is actually better, like you said, at this than we thought. It might be, hey, what's happening in lane 4 is the same thing that happened last week to this athlete and the week before to this athlete. So
okay.
tying the story together, especially during a semifinal season where all the workouts are the same. So as the weeks evolved, that then like kind of the production element of weaving those stories together became another role that I had.
Lucy brings up another question that I was going to ask you. She said they probably know me as Lisa Kimball or Emma Tall or Ellie Turner, referencing the fact that her name has been wrong multiple times. That kind of stuff, like when you an apology, when you hear that kind of stuff, um, as like an expert and a fan of the sport and someone who like is trying to promote, because like the last time you were on you spoke at length about how you're basically doing everything that you do is done with the purpose of promoting the athletes and promoting the sport and furthering both of those things and making it a more viable career and all that kind of stuff. So when you hear like mistakes, and like mistakes happen, I get that. I'm not having a go at anyone. But when you hear that kind of stuff or like something being missed that you have highlighted as important, like obviously you can't get too angry because like you want to still be involved and stuff, but like it must be really fucking annoying when you hear either an athlete be glossed over and like not mentioned at all when they should be, or like the Lisa Kimball scenario.
Yeah, it is frustrating, and it happens in many different areas. Then it was just this week. It's something like the Morning Chalka put out an article that listed Emma Tall as a rookie. It's her third. This will be her third CrossFit Games. Like mistakes like that especially on major publications or platforms that are going out to thousands to tens of thousands. Who knows how many people. Yeah, I hate that, and it shouldn't happen. If you're the Morning Chalk Up, if you're the CrossFit Games Instagram, if you're the broadcast for the CrossFit Games, like you should have accurate information. But it's and some like that's completely out of my control. I can't control whatever's being published over there right now. But I would expect that they'd be better than that, and I would
Mhm.
expect that the CrossFit Game Instagram would be better than that. When they were a couple of years ago, they were announcing Jacqueline Dahlstrom as a rookie, and it was her third season competing at the games. And they have 1 million+ followers. It's like, dude, you are the storytelling branch of the CrossFit Games. You have to get that right. And you have access to Chad Schroeder. Chad Schroeder is like the storehouse of all the data. All you have to do is just check it with him. Even if you think you're sure, why wouldn't you check it with him? Why would you risk being wrong on that? It's not like it wasn't a critical, time sensitive thing. Like you should just get it right when you have the resources available to do it. So that stuff bothers me for sure. And more of the broadcast sense, what I've had to learn is just to be patient and just that I can say 5 things that I think are going to be helpful, most of the time they are, but they might only choose to do two of them. And even though the other three things I think would have enhanced the quality over time, I still want to be grateful that they did the two. It's like I still feel like I made a positive impact. And then, hopefully over time, now it's like it's been 18 months that I've been working with the Hamilton Road Productions crew on a lot of these broadcasts, that, more and more of the things that we've talked about over time are being well received, and more people that are like part of the core and integral team understand who I am, and that more often than not, I do have, pretty good ideas when it comes to that, just based on the number of competitions I've, witnessed and worked at.
Have you ever suggested like a wide shot?
All the time. Yeah. I mean, that was
Why?
what
Why?
that was.
Why is the like? What's the aversion? Because like, if you're watching a soccer match, like football match, and something happens, say like player takes a shot, scores or misses or whatever, or looks pissed off, you get a close up for 4 seconds, maybe like 10 if it's Ronaldo, and then it'll like switch back to the wide shot. You'll see the whole pitch. You'll be able to see the strikers, the defenders, like almost both goalies. You can see like 75% of the pitch. It's all basically like you're playing FIFA. If I was watching a football match, if I was watching an Arsenal match, and all I could see was the last line of defense constantly, even though the ball was the other end of the pitch, I'd be so fucking pissed off. Or if I was just looking at a close up of the goalie, like slapping his hands together and like jumping up and down, trying to keep warm while the ball was up, like hitting the crossbar the other side, and there was a corner and all this kind of shit, I'd be so pissed off. So I don't understand why at a CrossFit event you have, oh, let's look at, like, the one that will always stick in my mind is the run and toes to bar from, was it like 2 years ago or something at the games, and then the ski. There was a workout, maybe two. I think it was the same year. It was outside on the grass with the skier, and I was looking at Laura Horvath on the skier for basically 80% of the workout, and it was like, can you just like zoom out and just show me where everyone is in relation to this, because I have no idea. Or like,
Mm-hmm.
you see on that toaster bar one, they're showing people running, and it's like, but there's currently people on the rig. Like, can you show me who's on the rig, or can you show me somebody else running instead of just the person that's directly behind the fucking go kart that you're sitting in? Like, can you just show me more of what's happening?
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple of things involved in this, and I've worked for broadcasts besides CrossFit Games events, and with different teams around the world. And the experience that I've had on the back end is very different at each one of those things. The team that does the majority of the production for the CrossFit Games season has been doing it for a long time. And I think that, when they started doing it, no one was really sure how to cover a CrossFit Games competition, because they hadn't really been done before. And it is quite complicated compared to some of those other sports. Now, the concept that you're talking about is not that complicated, but the directive from Dave Castro, basically across the board in the early years of broadcast, and like at the games in general over the early years of broadcast, from what I understand, was we're trying to find the fittest. We only care about the fittest. And if we found the fittest, then we did our job. And I mean, even up till a few years ago, there was no communication or suggestion from the CrossFit Games team in any way that they cared about anyone that finished outside of first. They didn't care about the rankings, the rank order of athletes 8 through 12, the way that I do, or the way that 20 through 30, the way that those athletes and those coaches care. Like, every spot on the leaderboard means something to the athletes and the coaches and the fans, but it didn't to CrossFit for a long time. I think that it has now, but or at least it's moving more in that direction, where they're more appreciative and recognizing of the fact that getting those things right matters too. And this, there's still decisions that they make that I think are totally outside of that. Like, I'm not a fan of cuts at all at the CrossFit Games. I'm not a fan of minimum work requirements at all at the CrossFit Games. What I am a fan of is zero work is 0 points. You don't want to do any work, you don't get any points, period. And we would have different results at the CrossFit Games historically if that was the case. But I always thought it was ridiculous that, like, Orlando Trejo would show up and not be able to ocean water swim, and he just wouldn't get to do the rest of the events. Like, come on, man. What, like, how is that helping anyone?
It's to mirror it to, or to parallel it to football again. It's the same. They changed a rule recently where if a goalkeeper gives away a penalty, they can't give away a penalty and get a red card, because it's like a double punishment for one, like, foul basically, or whatever.
Yeah. So anyway, I think that there's a change that's happening, but
Yeah,
sometimes
totally
change.
irrelevant, Peter, but nice job. Yeah, we'll move on.
Sometimes, to change something that's the only way you've ever done it, and the way that you were taught to do it, and the way
Yeah.
that you kind of created the narrative. Those people that were involved in that early on, and many of them still are, were involved in creating that. And so they have to have a reshift of mindset.
Yeah,
And
Halpin says the feedback the entire time about the podcast stream was stop using the wide shot. Yeah, but Halpin, the feedback was from people who didn't know what was happening and were constantly saying, "Why is the feed so bad? Why is the quality so low?" And like, so I think if people knew what was actually happening, they might appreciate it a bit more. It's actually funny. I was talking to you about that at the time where I helped out a little bit in Europe, and I was looking at my screen and I was like, these guys are going to be so pissed off I wasn't in Florida and Pasadena because this is like 4K quality. Like this is high level shit. And then I was walking back up and I was like, oh, I wonder what it actually looked like because I could only see like my like big screen and the other small screens. I was like, I wonder what it looked like on the feed. So I went in and I scrubbed like to halfway through and I was like, oh, that's my phone like on screen currently. And it was the shittest. It was like it was built of Lego bricks. I was like, it went from my phone in like cinematic quality,
yep.
drained my battery, like ate all my Wi-Fi, all my 5G or whatever, and then went to Chase's laptop and just turned into like a child's drawing in crayon. It's like so shit.
Yeah, and I realized I learned that in week 1, and I realized that, and then if you start walking with it, while you still think you have you're keeping it still and you have a perfect shot, it's basically useless.
Yeah.
So I just would try to find a spot that I could get what I wanted in the frame, keep it as still as possible, and let Chase pull it in when he wanted to, knowing that it still wasn't going to be not even a fraction of the quality that I was experiencing it in,
Yeah.
but that was the best we could do with what we were using.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, so I missed the first like conversation about it because I wasn't in Berlin yet, and then the second morning, Chase at like fucking 7 o'clock or something was like, "Oh, we'll meet in half an hour." I was like, "No, we fucking won't, Chase. I'll get there. I'll probably miss the first heat, but when I get there, I'll get there." Yeah. So I don't know how involved I really was with that. Okay. The uh, be friendly. Then I want to talk about that for a little while. So the journey to that was I guess you were with Morning Chocolate for a long time. And then you were doing while at Morning Chocolate, you're doing some stuff with Talking Elite. You were kind of like intermittently appearing. Then you were intermittently appearing on Savannah's show. Then you were like very regularly appearing on Savannah's show. Um, then you left Morning Chocolate and joined Barbend. Then you left Barbend and nobody knew what you were doing but knew that there was something coming, and then BeFriendly came about. So, one or two things that I want to talk to you about because one of them is still relevant now in a slightly different guise. But working with Morning Chalk Up and working with Savannah, or working with Talking Elite as you currently do now, and working with Savannah, um, it's a fine blade to walk, like where like there isn't a lot of love lost there between like Morning Chalk Up and Savannah. Like they don't like, generally speaking, as a brand, they don't like Savannah, and Savannah doesn't like the Morning Chalk Up publication. Like I don't know how he feels about the people there, but he doesn't like the publication. Same with Talking Elite Fitness. He doesn't like well, okay, he doesn't like the people at Talking Elite Fitness. He just don't even think he has a problem with the brand. It's more personal on that side. But then they don't really like him either. Like they've spoken about him on their paywall episode and stuff like last year or whatever, a year and a half ago. So working with, that's just background for people. I'm not like exposing anything that people don't know.
Well,
I'm
I
just
mean, and you
them.
can add into the equation, that I also work for CrossFit at periods during the year,
Yeah.
and CrossFit has different relationships with each one of those entities too.
Do you just like do you set out ground rules or do you just, because like it seems from my perspective it seems like you just ignore all of it and like people can say whatever they want and you don't care. Like I've watched you on Savannah with people commenting. There was like a real strong conversation going on at one point of like there's a lot of noise about like, oh, like it was almost like Savannah versus these other groups, and like you were on Savannah at the time while also working for the others. And I remember reading comments on the live chat and you just like laughing at them. And then I'm imagining you in an office with people saying similar stuff and you just laughing at it. Like, did you just decide early on, like, I just don't give a fuck what people say because when I'm here, I'm here, and when I'm there, and that's it?
I mean, there are times for sure that I would, and maybe even now, who knows, that it's like, man, if I was just doing one thing that was like streamlined and consistent, that might be nice to not have to have like I don't know, the political dance around all these other things. But I'll just take like a kind of a simple example. Tommy Marquez and Savannah Matosian are both friends of mine. They had a relationship with each other long before I knew either one of them. I wouldn't be, I wouldn't like Sevan was the guy that gave me the first opportunity, but the first opportunity was to come to CrossFit headquarters, and he wasn't there, and he left Tommy to take care of me while he was gone. So it's like, it's kind of funny, whatever exists between them, that it's like, from my perspective, I didn't think or know that there was ever an issue. And as
Yeah.
far as I'm concerned, whatever issue may or may not be relevant between them is not relevant for me. It's like, I have a good relationship with Sevan, I have a good relationship with Tommy, and I don't see why both of those things can't coexist. And that's more or less how I feel about every one of those, in scenarios.
Yeah, I think the thing is as well, like I like Savannah, I really like Savannah, and I find him very supportive and very like generous with his time and stuff. But a lot of people just fucking hate him and like won't listen to anything to the contrary of that. Like my wife isn't a fan of Savannah because of his like anti-vax status, and or well, he says he's not anti-vax, but like
Well,
you
I'll
know what I
just ask
mean.
you this about, do you think that Sevan portrays that he's good at listening to the contrarian point of view?
I think he does. Like I had a conversation with him. He was on my show and he brought up racism, and it was the most uncomfortable. It was the most uncomfortable 20 minutes. It was the most uncomfortable 20-minute lecture I ever sat through. But like at the end, he was like asking me my opinion on it, and I was like, "Man, I don't know. Like I don't know. Like I was like 15. The first time I saw like a black person in real life, I was 15. Like I'm not.
And you
I'm
were
not.
wearing, and what were
I
you
was
wearing?
wearing a FUBU hoodie. Oh God. But the you didn't have to bring that bit up. But
You said
like
that you answered the question.
I was not like I'm not an authority. I'm not like we don't have the same issues here don't exist as exist there because I don't know why, but we're not as much of a political what would you call it, powder keg or whatever. But like other stuff he asked me about like, oh, why would you get vaccinated or whatever, and I was like, well, because I need to go to work to pay my mortgage, and if I don't get it I can't go to work and that kind of stuff. And like he was just like, yeah, okay, I get it, like, you know, he's like, yeah, fair enough, like I get it, everyone's different, whatever. Whereas I feel like if I'm talking to my wife and she says like, you know, if we're watching the live stream of his live stream of an event, she'd be like, why are you watching this? And I'll say, oh, like it's funny or whatever, and like she'd be like, I don't know, but is this not the guy? And like just always goes back to that.
And that's the thing is, in my personal experience with him, very much open-minded. He'll have conversations, he'll entertain other points of view, but frequently on his show, he'll pull up a comment and he'll say, "Look at this idiot right here. Let me tell you guys all the reason why this person is an idiot," and blah, 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 and just go on. And that kind of thing, I think, turns people off to him.
Yeah,
And because of that, and he doesn't really care. He's got kind of that Greg Glassman attitude. He's like, I don't care for 1,000 or 15,000 affiliates. I want people that are with me, that are with me to the end and whatever else. And so like, if you don't care, then that's totally fine. And, that's the way he is. But that's, I think, why some people lose interest
yeah.
and it's unfortunate because he does have, way more positive things to offer than negative, but the negative can kind of drown out the positive for a lot of people, or at least that's what I think.
Yeah, I also think as well, and I am not equating any of his potential foibles to what Michael Jackson did, but I will listen to a Michael Jackson song because I like a Michael Jackson song, but I don't agree with all of his viewpoints on everything. Or I listen to like Ignition by R. Kelly, great song, but like I don't I don't agree with everything that R. Kelly did. But I'm the same with Savannah. I listen to I pick and choose which live shows I listen to because a lot of the time it gets down into the dirt a bit, and I just like I can't. But I listen to all like the CrossFit ones, the recap ones, all those kind of ones.
The
Love
disc
it.
golf.
Yeah, oh, yeah. That's 5. Oh, he actually paid. Look, he gave £3. That's another one. But yeah, he like I think some people just need to like help him. Basically, has it here of what you said. No, where is he? Here. Whatever issue may or may not be between them is not relevant to me, and more people need that. And I think that if you can separate the two, types of Savan show, or the two types of like you say, I always found him to be open minded. I always found him to be very generous with his time, very generous with like advice or appreciation or feedback or praise or criticism or whatever. And I think like there are like in the that thread, like I quickly realized literally nothing personal is in this. You know, like where I'd be like, they'd be like, anyone free for North America East? And I'm like, yeah, I am. And they'd be like, okay, I'll take Halpin, Spin, and whoever. I'm like, okay. And then it's like next time, like, I'm still free. It's like, I'll take Halpin, Spin. It was like, okay. Like, and then I quickly realized like there is literally nothing personal in this. But I think other people might be like, oh fuck him, like he didn't pick me, so I don't like him anymore because ego or whatever. So I don't know. I think you attract what you give out, I think a bit. But yeah, to summarize, I really like him. So you managed to separate those things. And then so BFriendly. Now when I heard BFriendly starting up, my initial assumption was, so I heard that you were starting something. You put something kind of cryptic-y up in a story or something like watch this space or some one of those types of things. And I messaged Brian Spin, I think. And I said, oh, I bet they're doing like statistics. I bet they're doing like, oh, Dubai, do you want all the information on the athletes that are going there for your commentators? We'll compile a little dossier and give it to you. And then, like down under championships, like, look, we have all this dossier of information on athletes or whatever. And then I was like, then I thought, oh, maybe like articles based on those things as well, like summaries of, events and stuff. How long has this been? I just wanted to prove to everyone that I knew it was happening before. That's what that whole spiel was about. How long was this? Was this always part of the plan, or did you see a gap in the market where you, like you mentioned, that the mistakes that you saw and see at Morning Chalk Up and other outlets, was it a frustration at that? Did you think that you could, that there was a void that you could fill with a different kind of approach to it?
No, it was not. I wouldn't say it was premeditated, and quite frankly, like most of the career changes that I've made within CrossFit weren't planned either. Actually, kind of things were going very well at Morning Chalk Up towards the end. From my perspective, the team that we had in place at that time was actually starting to kind of hit on all cylinders, and a better offer came, and I had to kind of take a chance, and I felt like there was a little bit of a ceiling of a limit at Morning Chalk Up of how much they were going to value what I thought I had to offer, and that Bar Bend had that kind of blown the glass roof off that ceiling. So I took a chance with them, and they, there's always risk involved, right? For all I know, Morning Chalk Up could have sold this year instead of Bar Bend, right? And then who knows what it looks like. But Bar Bend ended up, having an opportunity to sell after nearly a decade of or plus of whatever they've been doing over there, and they kind of, I don't think that the CrossFit vertical was at the place that they were wanting to advertise in a sale, so they just kind of let us go. And there was nothing that was like locking them into the contract. It wasn't like a 1 year guarantee, and it wasn't a 1 year guarantee for them that I would stay. It was just an opportunity, and I decided to take it. After that happened, I started to try to pursue some different options, and many people who had already previously been suggesting to me that I try something on my own were reiterating that. Part of the reason that I hadn't previously really given it any serious thought is because I can't, like, there's some things that I just don't want to do when it comes to running a business, or that I'm not good at. And in many cases, they're the same. So, for example, you were asking about Chad Mueller. If I didn't have someone like Chad, and maybe if it wasn't Chad specifically, I'm not sure, like we probably wouldn't have done this now, because the services, the skills that he has, I don't have. And then it's basically Patrick Clark, myself, and Chad that kind of between the three of us, we kind of checked all the boxes of the things that I thought I needed help with, that those two guys would satisfy the needs and the roles that I couldn't fill. And the timing just seemed good. So we decided on April 1st that we were going to launch on May 1st and give it a try through the games, but with not necessarily a very like specific or clear intention of like, this is exactly what it's going to be. So we've more or less been letting it develop organically, keeping an open mind and knowing what our skill sets and what we think our value is, and hoping to build up a following and a consistency over time.
Are you happy with how it's gone?
I mean, for the most part, yes. I think that by no means is it what I would like. If you told me on May 1st, can you tell me what by the time you get to the end of June, what will BFriendly look like? It wouldn't be this, but yeah, I'm pretty happy with a lot of the way that things have developed so far. And I think the game season, the semifinals and the games is like it's kind of different. It stands alone from other parts of the year, and I'm pretty excited for some of the things that we can hopefully be doing more consistently in the off season to help with the development of this sport as well, which will look a lot different than what I do during the games.
I will say so I don't read a lot, which would be obvious to anyone who had more than a 5 minute conversation with me. But I like the way you write, and also the little recap videos from semifinals, just brilliant. They were like absolutely fantastic. They're really well made, and they were really like aesthetically pleasing. Like the outside the venue, not the. There's nothing wrong with the other ones, but I just mean specifically the reel on Instagram with just you full length.
Sure.
I really like those. Yes, that's more of that. I assume is coming
Are
from.
you hitting on me?
No, I know I
Oh,
don't.
okay.
I know I don't have a shot. Um, you during the games, then there's going to be more of that. I assume more like recaps, more like preview articles, preview like conversations with Patrick, preview or like during I suppose similar conversations with Patrick, similar articles like daily recap articles, and then the full length. Like you to camera. Here's what happened day one or event one or whatever. Is that what we can expect?
We're working on a lot of the game stuff now. It's very different than semifinals for several reasons, but we're trying to put a team together that can deliver a lot of those things, but it won't be, but not all of them will be me because if you notice during semifinals, part of I thought those recap videos were really fun and helpful, and I got a lot of good feedback on them as well. But that was kind of all I could do.
Yeah.
With the roles and responsibilities I have with the broadcast, take up a lot of time. Even if we're doing light coverage on heats, I'm watching the heats. I'm watching them so that I can inform the commentators. What are the critical things from heats 1 through 3, so that we can just like kind of weave it immediately into the storytelling, and to give them a break, because it's a lot more stressful to be talking and focused and really locked in for the amount of time that they are, where I have a little bit more freedom. So it's not a lot of time that I have to write and do long videos for those competitions, and the games will be similar. So I'm hoping to have some writers and to have some written content. I'm working to put together those pieces right now, and we have some ideas for the ways that I can be useful that will be similar to that, where it's a couple minutes here or there. Like those are basically one take every time. It's just me kind of doing what I like to do, which is kind of pick and choose the most critical things that, or maybe they're the things that I think are second most critical, but I know that every other person is going to talk about the most critical one. So I try to just highlight this, like, I didn't really focus too much on Lazar at this. He was just dominating everyone, and everyone saw that, and everyone can talk about that. But Henrik Apalainen was having a great competition too, and so he was one of the stories that I tried to focus on at the end of the competition, because while Lazar was clearly the first best there that weekend, Henrik was clearly the second best. And when you're clearly the second best, a lot of times, unfortunately, you just don't get it pays to win.
Especially when you're Heinrich, you don't get the same attention that like
Well,
put
and the
any.
thing is, he didn't win anything. His best
Yeah.
finish was third in any individual event. So even someone like Victor Hoffer, that has a couple heat wins on the last day, gets more screen time, more limelight, more press and attention than this guy who's just going to work and doing business. It's like BKG some years at the games. It's like Cole Sager or Noel Olson over the course of their career. Like, you might not realize that Noel Olson has like never in 9 years been worse than 15th place at the games.
Yeah.
But outside of the year he was second, he was never in the top 5. Well, I
Yeah.
guess the
The
2020,
2020.
but
Yeah.
yeah. So he just kind of like amazing and consistent over time, but doesn't get that attention. And then on top of it, yeah, Henrik's just like he's
I've
not
I
he's not he's not seeking attention type
Yeah,
of
I'm
person.
convinced that if Henrik wants to make it, he needs to just before 3, 2, 1 go, just punch someone else in the face. And then like just forever he'll be like everyone will be like, fuck, that's the guy who punched BK just before that. And then it just forever he'll get attention. Because they'll be watching him. Camera would never leave him. If he just even like pretended to punch someone, the
I
camera
mean,
for
maybe
every
he can
heat
be
would be like,
less like violent towards others. Like maybe he can just like pounding his chest and slapping his face on the finish on the start mat. And you do
yeah,
that enough
then
times where people will be like, fuck, dude, this guy,
he's
he
a
just brings it
psycho.
every event.
Or if he brings out like smelling chalk or smelling salts before every event or something. Then just before we came on, I saw Haley Adams put up a post And she said like doing it for me this time, and it was very artsy. I was very impressed with her photography. It was her on a bike, I think, and then her on a rower. But the rower pick in particular was very good because it was like in the reflection of a wall and stuff. It was cool. Um, one of the things that you do, have done, and continue to do, will continue to do, is preview events and review events. You'll talk about like who did not perform at the level that would have been expected of them, who like outperformed the level that would be expected of them. Both of those could be taken as an insult, really, I suppose. Um, who you'll preview events saying like who will not be a factor, again an insult, and who, you know, who might surprise people, again like maybe a bit of an insult there. So if you are an athlete who is, you know, keeping up to date with content and stuff, like do you ever like hold back? Like, are you ever like, oh, maybe I shouldn't, like I've kind of pounded on that person the last two events or the last two, like at semifinals during quarterfinals, saying, oh, they're past it or they're whatever, you know, like do you ever worry about just hammering on one person or like not including someone? Like, do you ever feel like maybe I should just include them in the top five, even though I don't think they're going to finish in the top five, just to make them feel good? Especially with Mal and Haley and Olivia and, you know, or yeah, Olivia, or, you know, there was someone else recently. Who's the other person recently?
I'll just
Fuck.
say this. I do those for the fans, not for the athletes.
Mm,
And I feel like that, based on the totality of the information that I have, which is sometimes limiting, sometimes, certain athletes or camps or whatever don't offer out the full picture of what's going on with their athletes leading into a competition, which is totally fine. But based on what I know, which I think is quite a lot about this sport and the history of this sport and the trends of the sport and the way that that's changing, with different kind of generations or eras that are flowing through it, I try to put out the best picture that I can about what's likely to happen or what did happen, because I think that, for many people, it's really easy to latch onto the obvious. This person was dominating, and
mm,
lose sight of the rest of it. And like you mentioned earlier, it is and always has been important to me to to keep in mind for myself, and also to hopefully help remind people that every athlete that's taking the floor at one of these competitions is insanely good. Like, you cannot be mediocre anymore and make it into a high level competition. Even last year, when you have no invites to Dubai, the athletes that are competing there, they had to earn their way in through a competition, and they're very good. It's like the mid tier at a semifinal. You might not see them or notice them the whole weekend, but if you went to a gym and they happen to be there, you would notice them immediately. Like,
mm,
they are at a totally different level. And the problem is that within that group of elite athletes or professional athletes or those that are aspiring to be that, there's still this major kind of exponential arc that exists, and the people at the top are just that much better,
mm.
and the ones behind that, despite how good they are, often don't get as much attention as I think that their caliber of excellence deserves. So I try to find different ways to highlight that. And yeah, I mean, I know there are times that I piss athletes off, and sometimes it's like I'm talking about a bigger picture and I'm just asking a question. I'm saying, because all I really want from CrossFit to say is what their intention is. Why do we have 40 athletes at the games? Why is it 40? Why is it the 40 that we've selected? Why have we distributed the spots that way? And if there's an answer, there's an answer. But when we see answers that are kind of feeble or don't really have much to stand on, then I'm going to just ask questions, and I'm going to say, why are we continuing to give 2 spots to Asia? Outside of Roman, none of the people that have qualified there in recent history have either don't show up, or they withdraw, or they finish bottom 3 every time. Now, there's some circumstances that make it challenging for those athletes for sure. And, you know, I don't want to necessarily take that away from them. And it is can be frustrating for the athletes when someone like me presents that information and maybe doesn't offer the full scope of that athlete's story's context to a broad audience. But, you know, it's not that I have anything against the athlete. And part of it is I'm saying, like, look, you've had 6 opportunities, and 6 out of 6, you've done this. You've never done this. I don't know what else that you want me to say.
Mm. Do you ever have any like awkward encounters with, like, in person, with like an
Sometimes,
athlete or a fan or a coach?
sometimes, and I think that for me, the question that I regularly have to ask myself is my purpose or my intention still true? Is it still positive? And if as long as I can answer that, then I feel like I can deal with those things, even if they have a bitterness or a resentment towards me for something I might have said or written. And if and if I do feel like I've strayed from that intention, or if I've represented something inaccurately, I try to always make it a point to correct that situation as soon as I can. I had a situation last year with the games athlete where the way that I had said something was misrepresenting a scenario surrounding a drug allegation. That's extremely serious, and I had to, I had to take steps both publicly and privately, and I wanted to try to make that, make the amends there. It didn't like I just I wasn't careful with what I said, and it was not untrue, but it wasn't true the way that I represented it either. So and those are sometimes lessons that are learned the hard way, and I've been, I'm fairly grateful and appreciative that a lot of the times that I have kind of made mistakes that I think are kind of inexcusable, that athletes or coaches or managers have been able to, kind of find a solution for that and still have good relationships. But I think that's just because I'm also not afraid to say that I screwed it up.
Yeah.
Like, people make mistakes all the time, and I think that it's something that frustrates people about the CrossFit Games team over the years, is that they obviously are making mistakes, but they're like justifying them
What?
instead of
Hang
just
on.
owning
Whoa,
them.
whoa, whoa, whoa. Let's not throw shit around the place. Making mistakes. Can you give me what? Can you give me 400 examples of times that they... that's all I want. Just 400 examples. I bet you can only give me 399.
I think we're at our time limit.
um, with
Well, look, if you make mistakes regularly enough, whether you own them or not, eventually it's like, okay, well, I know that you don't mean to do this, but you're just not good enough at it. But I think what never sits well with people is when it's like, come on, man, we can all see that that's a 30-pound dumbbell, and you wrote it down RX as a 50-pound dumbbell, and that's just annoying. Like, that's not like, why are you doing that? We literally see you putting the 30-pound dumbbell up.
Yeah, we can all see that your skipping rope is invisible. It doesn't exist. With so with just on BFriendly, if you're looking for anyone who, if you're looking for people to write and you want somebody who can write something that's totally innocuous and doesn't actually say anything, but is about 400 words and pisses people off in comments, I'm right here. I actually don't.
You have a good track record of that and identifying the best teams around the world.
Yeah, well, bar one, but I mean, nobody was predicting that. Actually, funny, I had a conversation with someone. They laughed at that story that I put like the eyes beside Zach George's team that didn't go, and they replied and laughed, and I was like, yeah, no, I mean, in fairness, nobody was predicting that. And then they said, well, I predicted it, and I was like, that they'd join Gladiators and like leave the team, and they said no, but he has a history of underperforming in live competition and finding ways to avoid doing it. And it was like, so it's similar to getting better and better at competing. You have to find more and more ridiculous excuses not to turn up. And I was like, fucking hell, that is pretty harsh, but also kind of accurate. Yeah, but I just enjoy writing. The games then, actually, so when you're at semifinals, I know I saw you doing like push-ups and stuff in your hotel room, and I've seen you like you're pretty good, like you're pretty good at CrossFit, like, but definitely in present company, you're very good. Uh, but like, does your fitness and your ability to train and stuff, does it like ebb and flow with the season? Like, do you find like during those 3 weeks semifinals you did fuck all, and then like during the games you'll like squeeze little bits and pieces in, but not really, and you'll be like just eating when or where and when you can? Like, do you find that you have these probably the periods where you need it the most, like you most need to be active physically and to eat well and stuff? It's really a big struggle to do that during those periods of time.
The eating, not so much, because the being a part of the broadcast team, and even if you're like on the competition team, volunteer teams at the games or the semifinals, they're providing food, and for the most part they're providing it at least a somewhat healthy option most of the time. That's like kind of within the parameters of nutrition for CrossFit. So that's not actually that bad. Sometimes the timing of meals is weird, and sometimes you miss a meal, but the quality of the food is usually quite actually fine. Sleep sometimes can be at a premium, which is never great. And yeah, everyone has like a different, and when I say everyone, I mean people that regularly go to these competitions and are there for, 7 to 10 days at a time, or all 3 semifinals. People have different ways that they go about managing their fitness. And I don't do a lot of working out when I'm at the competitions generally. To me, it's the catching up with for old friends, meeting new people, networking, taking chances that I won't have
Oh,
trying to wake up early and like go drop into the gym somewhere. So I don't do that as much as some other people do. Some are very committed to that.
mm.
And yeah, so then overall, yes, there's some ebbs and flows to my fitness throughout the year, but I've kind of been doing this for fitness wise for me in 10 years. And I still, I went and dropped into a gym today, and like I still have a baseline of capacity and strength that I can kind of lean on.
Mm. You dropped out a couple of times there, so we will start wrapping up in case your brother is turning off the Wi-Fi or something. He's.
You know why he's doing that?
I feel
He's
like
ready
he's
for another round of disc
yeah,
golf.
he's like standing out a shot, like spinning it on his finger, just like waiting, tapping his watch. The games then. So obviously we talked about predicting stuff can piss some people off. So I want you to predict um, who, having seen what you've seen at semifinals, who would you hang your hat on as the male, the female, and the team champions?
I do think that there are scenarios this year that create, more open opportunity. I still don't think that I've seen enough to say that the favorites aren't the favorites. So for me, it's still Justin, it's still Laura, and it's still East Nashville Proven that are the entities to beat in their respective divisions. And like more than likely, when my
You froze there for I'd say about a sentence and a half. He said more than likely one of my, and then froze.
when more than likely when any predictions or projections come out for the games, those three
Yeah.
Justin, Laura, and Proven will be the top of the list.
Okay. Do you think we're going to see a return to? I was actually listening to JR and Taylor and Will the other day. As like really, really good show. Shut up and scribble if you want to get into programming and stuff. But they were talking about getting athletes ready for semifinals, getting athletes ready for quarterfinals, that kind of stuff based off programming that they've seen. And one of the things they were talking about is like, well, what are we going to see at the games this year? Are we going to see a continuation of what we've seen at semifinals? Or are we going to see like something totally radically different where Boz is like, oh, you thought I was going to do that? Well, I'm going to do this or whatever. Are you expecting, like, if you had to choose a side, would you say we'll probably continue down a similar route to the one that we're on with some, holes and, gymnastic kind of stuff that we don't usually test maybe? And then, or do you think that like, oh, we'll go totally different and there'll be a shit ton of squats because we haven't done any squats, and there'll be a shit ton of, like random shit that you wouldn't predict Boz would do?
I I think it's an amazing time to have that conversation because he hasn't done enough competitions yet for us to say specifically, yeah, he has an MO, and
Yeah.
it's very predictable. Where this is actually is a great time for him to go a different direction. And I think some people have made the observation that on average it seems that a slightly bigger athlete has made their way to the games this year. But this is not something that's uncommon throughout the history of the sport. So the margins at the cut line for the qualifiers to the CrossFit Games are very small, and some nuances in programming will shift the kind of demographic of athlete that's able to kind of make up the ground on those margins. So you might
Mm.
not, like Victor Hoffer and Branislav Lenkovic, with one change to the programming, take away the ruck, just as maybe that shifts enough points so that Braun doesn't go and Victor goes. Like it could be that small because those guys are all so fit. So some programming decisions have a massive impact. But anyway, so I think this year's games is a huge kind of demarcation point for him where he can say like, nope, this is something that you can regularly expect as long as I'm at the helm, or just like kind of when Dave was in charge, you got to be ready for everything, because when you think I'm going this way, it goes this way, and when you think I'm going this way, it goes this way.
Yeah, I don't know if Boz has the personality for that. I think Castro did. He was very much like, fuck you for even trying to predict what I'm going to do. He's like, I'll show you. Like, you thought I was going to do pegboard. I'm going to burn a pegboard in the middle of the floor and everyone's going to run laps. Whereas, like, Boz is, I think, more, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but we'll see.
Well, I mean, just take one comment that he made. He made this comment about jump ropes and rings, basically saying a jump rope is not a double under machine and rings are not exclusively for ring muscle ups. Well, we've had ring muscle ups at 3 straight stages of competition so far this season. Now, granted, the ring complex was involved at the semifinals. We had muscle ups in the open, muscle ups in quarterfinals, muscle ups at semifinals. I would be shocked if there's muscle ups at the games.
Hmm.
You know, and so it's like, well, what else are you gonna use the rings for? You know, does he have the audacity to throw in ring handstand push-ups again that we haven't seen since 2016? Maybe he does, but then he has the rope. And it's like, well, we've been using the rope for kind of anything but double unders, or we really haven't had any workout with double unders that's like the double unders are relevant. Maybe we will have a really dense double under workout at the games, where it's kind of the antithesis, where he's like, yeah, rings are for more than ring muscle ups, but then we have ring muscle ups at every point of the season, and double unders, jump rope are not the only thing for a jump rope, and we don't see them for a while, and now we do. So I think that it's hard in science, or if you're evaluating anything, when you have small sample size to make any kind of big claim. And I think that, this year in particular, he'll add plenty of data to that, where we can have maybe a more well-rounded picture of what we could expect from the totality of the programming mind that is Adrian Bosman.
Well, look, we'll leave it there. We'll catch up again in another 3 years. I want to thank you for coming on, and then it probably will seem like I'm flirting with you now, but if anyone wants to go, and watch probably one of the 2 best podcasts I think I've ever listened to, is the 2 are Taylor Self's like long show he did with Savannah, and then the second is your long show that you did with Savannah. 2 of those were like mind-blowingly good. I like 2 people that I was like, I think I know what makes that guy tick, and then I watched an episode of it and I'm like, fucking hell, there's a lot of shit going on there that I didn't realize. 2 really, really good episodes. And then BFriendlyFitness.com and at BFriendlyFitness on Instagram and YouTube as well. Oh, I saw Hiller actually say that if you say in a video, please like and subscribe to the channel, that it went up by like 500% or something for him that day. So please like and subscribe to this
You're
channel.
too late. Everyone turned it off like 10 seconds ago.
Probably. But listen, I really appreciate everything that you do. Because I know an awful lot of it is voluntary, and has been historically voluntary. But I think that I personally think the sport wouldn't look the way that it looks without you in it, and without people that have been brought in or inspired to become part of it, like Halpin and other people, because of you being in it. So I think it would be very easy for you and others to underplay the impact that you've had on the ecosystem of the sport. But I do think that there's an enormous Brian Friend shaped footprint on CrossFit. I think there will continue to be as well moving forward. But thank you for coming on. Congrats on BFriendly, and best of luck to you and Patrick and Chad with everything that you're doing with that. And we'll see you in Madison.
Hell yeah. Thank you, Peter.
Yeah, that would have been a great time to pretend you'd frozen, by the way. If you just, like, after a compliment, just be like, oh.